Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mosaic Podcast. I know I say this every podcast, but today I am saying this with my full heart and soul. I met this man, I think a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. And the moment I met him, I just felt like we were brothers from another mother. His way of life, I love. What he represents, I love. The work he's doing in this world, I love. And it's just going to be my honor to bring him on with you, to meet to the people that I love, to meet a man that I just love. And we're going to meet him together because I don't know that much about him. I know more than you know at this point, but not so much more than you know that we're going to have the beautiful opportunity to discover him together. So buckle your seatbelt. Maybe unbuckle your seatbelt and let yourself have the freedom to move into a different realm, because I think we're going to go there. It is my honor today to introduce you to Kedarji. He has more than 30 years experience in the field of whole life transformation, combining his 4 pillars of total well-being: spiritual power, improved mental state, emotional resilience, and vibrant health, into an ecology of well-being that has transformed many, many lives. He's the founder of the Bhakta School of Transformation, an Ohio-based non-for-profit public charity devoted to lasting inner peace and total well-being. The website immediately that I want you to go to, and you can even do it while I'm talking, not while he's talking, because I want you to hear him, is https://wholelifetransformationsummit.org, and that will be in the show notes, so don't worry about getting wrong. And he has a book that he wants to give you as a free download, as a free gift for anybody watching and being a part of this podcast, and I'm going to let him tell you about it. Right now, I want to turn the monologue into a conversation. Kedarji, it's an honor and a privilege to have you on the Mosaic Podcast. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
So because we hinted at it and lofted the wall up across the net, I don't normally start with a free gift to people, but what is the name of that free gift that you're going to give to people?
So I've just published a book, How to Live Strong and Be Happy. Subtitle, Learn the Daily Rituals of the Most Spiritually Powerful, Happiest and Healthiest People on the Planet. And it's a book that very concisely lays out what we here in the Bhakta School of Transformation refer to as the Ecology of Well-Being, and Kedarji's 4 pillars of total well-being. And so the book outlines that in very precise terms, goes down each of the 4 pillars: the spiritual power, improved mental state, emotional resilience, and vibrant health, and then also shifts between the utterances of wisdom of sages of steady wisdom, of great lineages, saints, and how modern science corroborates those utterances with respect to these 4 pillars.
Love it. And to get that free book, you're going to see this again in the show notes. It's going to be, you're going to go to https://bhaktaschool.org / I guess those are all forward slashes, /free-ebook-download/. And don't worry about copying it. It's all in the show notes. Kedarji, thank you for being here again. Let's jump in.
Sure.
For some reason, I start off every podcast with the same question, and I don't know quite why I do it, but it somehow gives a texture for the environment in which you entered into this world. And so I always ask people, what did your parents do?
Well, I was raised in a performing arts family. So my mother, who has passed now, Elizabeth Foster, was a concert opera singer.
Wow.
Had a very long career in opera, Lincoln Center, traveled through Europe, etc. She was a protege of Leontine Price. And so she had a wonderful career, became world renowned And as she was traveling through Europe performing opera, she got picked up for movies, for TV, etc. Met my father in Italy while she was touring, singing Madama Butterfly, one of the great operas of our
Yeah.
time. And so met him because he was a stage manager at one of the opera houses that through the cities that she was traveling through. They got together, they got married. He loves opera. He's on the technical side, stage management, lighting and sound, that was his life. And so these are the parents that I was born through.
Wow.
Giovanni and Elizabeth.
And so mom was what nationality and dad was what nationality?
So my mother was part African American and part Choctaw Indian.
Wow.
I have a whole lineage of Native American through my mother's side. And then my father was Sicilian.
Wow.
Born and raised in Naples, but his entire family raised in Sicily. So.
And so did mom continue singing opera and doing opera performances when you were born? How did,
Yes.
what? And
yeah,
so,
so my brother and I, my brother is Giancarlo Esposito. I'll just mention that because he's he's a celebrity Hollywood actor now. And so we were both born on tour, essentially.
Wow. Wow.
My mother was touring in Copenhagen, Denmark, singing opera. That's where my brother was born. I was born in Rome, Italy, when my mother was on tour with Porgy and Bess. And so, yeah, we were living out of a suitcase.
And what was that like for you? How often did you change locations? How you had?
We went everywhere that mom went. So there was a period of, I would say, 4 or 5 years where we were just on the road with her, with the exception of when we were very young kids. So we had a wonderful caretaker. My brother had a wonderful caretaker in Copenhagen, and she cared for him in his younger years while my mother was touring. I had another caretaker in Rome, Italy, which is where I was born. And so I remained there. And then as we got old enough to travel with her, we were literally going city to city, town to town for all her tours, mostly through Europe. And then the tour came back to the US because my mom was born in Birmingham, Alabama.
Wow.
And so the tour came back to the US and we wound up first in New York City, but settling in Indianapolis, Indiana, because my father had a teaching position at a university, teaching stage management. And then my mother got hired to teach opera at Indiana University. So we wound up in the Midwest for a while.
Crazy, crazy. How, if you spun the bottle and put a push pin on the map, how would you end up in Indiana of all those places, right?
Exactly. But I think it just happened. And I have a little bit of memory from Indianapolis and where we lived in the suburban areas, very different than it is today. We were right next to a forest. I remember my father taking us into the forest and we would go with him and he would catch these wild white horses that he would rope and bring into the yard just for us to ride for a while. And then we would release them back into the forest, which was literally 10 feet from our backyard.
Wow.
So it was a great environment to grow up in at that time. That's, a lot of years ago. But I remember enjoying the time that we spent there. But it wasn't that long. Then we shifted around quite a bit and wound up back in New York City eventually because my mom was singing at Lincoln Center.
So there are so many things that I want to unpack here because common psychological practices would be that the first years of your life are the years that you get given, the tools for who you are for the rest of your life. And most people want a stable environment. It sounds like you had a stable environment with your mom and dad, but nothing else around you was stable.
Well, that's true in one sense, but I think my mother had a very early on the intention to raise us to be performing artists. And that was my brother and I, these were our first careers. He's still in the business. I left movie and TV to go into music. But she trained us, she groomed us from a very young age, beginning with training our voices, then training us in dance. We were trained formally in ballet.
Wow.
And other forms of dance, and then acting. And she was our first teacher in that regard. So we actually grew up wanting to be on the stage just because of that influence with mom. And then we both got our careers professionally in acting and singing and dancing started at a very early age. My first production, I think I was age 7, my brother was age 6.
Wow.
That was a Broadway musical that went viral. Maggie Flynn was the title. Jack Cassidy and Shirley Jones were the stars, and the show was about 9 orphans. It was about an orphanage in New York City, post World War I. And it was all about the orphans. And my brother and I, and Irene Cara is a name that people may remember. She got her start in that musical. So there were 9 of us, and we were the stars of the show. That's at age 7. I was
Wow. Wow.
my professional Broadway musical career started then.
So we look today at shows like American Idol, where there's 13-year-old kids coming on, and we think, how do they have the guts to do that? But you were doing that many, many years ago at age 7 and 6 with your brother.
Exactly. And it all had to do with the strength, the upbringing, and the spiritual strength of my mom.
And so what would you say it was that your mom was at the heart of what your mom gave you, that gave you the courage and this fortitude and the strength to be able as a 7-year-old kid to stand on Broadway?
Well, of course, the first thing she gave us is that she went with us everywhere
Yeah.
to watch over us because we were underage. So mom was always there. But my mom had a great deal of inner strength that she got from her upbringing in the Baptist church by her grandmother. And so she had a very strong belief and experience in God. But underlying that, really the greatest thing that mom gave me at that time, at that very tender age, was to respect human dignity and to never do anything to violate one's human dignity, to never allow my own human dignity to be violated.
Yeah.
And she thought that that was very important. She saw human dignity and God to be synonymous.
We need mom around now.
Yes, I think so.
we need her in every home across this country and across this world, right?
Exactly.
Because how did it happen that we went from a place where that was such a beautiful, and it, like, I'm sure your mom was exceptional in giving you that core value, but it was also the core value of the time that we grew up in, of that moment, right?
It was a different time indeed, yes.
And so how does evolution change a core value like that, where you never do anything to violate the dignity of another human being, to the place we're sitting in today?
I think it all has to do, and now this, of course, is comes out of my the bond of power, my relationship with my spiritual guru. One, we all have karmas, yeah, from past lives. Some people don't believe in karmas, but that's like saying the sunshine doesn't exist. You can believe that sunshine doesn't exist, but the sun still exists.
That's right.
And the sun still shines. So, so you can believe whatever you want, but we all have karmas to varying degrees, and to that extent, there are collective karmas. And so collectively as a society, values have changed based on the collective karmas of individuals. And so today the values are very different. There are things that we accept today that my parents, my grandparents would have never allowed to happen.
Right, 100%.
There are, you know, I remember people, my grandparents, and even in my mother's time, people were willing to march on public offices, to march on Congress, if the common good was not properly represented. You know, this was the time of civil rights.
Totally.
This is the time that I grew up in, and other movements, JFK, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., where people had different values and they respected the common good. They respected righteousness that has its root in human dignity. And that's eroded. And it's eroded because collectively it's not of value for most people. And I think in my own experience, because I've been on both sides of that fence, that it really has to do with whether or not people are spiritually anchored. Yeah. And today people are, and this doesn't apply to everyone, but there are a lot of people who are not spiritually anchored. And when I say spiritually anchored, I don't mean connected to any particular church or path. I mean anchored in the experience of this great power that we each have within us, this divinity within us. And there has always been a push from below and a push down from above with respect to, this conflict between purity and impurity. It's always there. I believe it's part of God's will. In other words, to be pure, there have to be hurdles that,
Right.
that you go over, just like an Olympic hurdler has to jump hurdles to get stronger, right?
Yeah.
So impurities, I think, are God's way of giving us obstacles that we have to surpass because we become stronger in doing so. But in our modern day society, the values are different because everything depends on what we want collectively, and what we want collectively today is very different.
So for those people who are listening, because we've grown up in an individualized society, we grew up where everybody's taught to be an individual. So much so that my mom and dad both died on the same day, 2 years apart. That day was July 4th, when my dad died when I was 13, my mom when I was 15. And the message that I mistakenly took away from that for almost 40 years was that they died on Independence Day to tell me to be independent. And what I realized in writing my book, The Mosaic, some 45 years later, is they weren't born on Independence Day. They died on Independence Day. The message they were trying to say to me is independence brings death, because you can't succeed and do the things you can as one person. You have to come together collectively and do things together. But to those people who are strong individualists, to those people who say, well, I don't like the trend of the way society is moving in right now, I will not be swept up in it. What do you say to those people?
There has to be, again, a spiritual anchor. Because the greatest thing I was taught by my spiritual mentor is to see everyone as God, is to see the highest in everyone, is to understand that we are not just simply separate from each other, but that God exists equally in everyone. And now that label God is somewhat tainted in modern times. So I will say highest spiritual awareness. That's what I will call it. The energy substratum of everything, because science supports this. Quantum physics supports it. Biological science supports that there is an energy substratum to everything and everyone. And many have found through research and have embraced the fact that it's one energy. So that's what I'm referring to as God, and it's divine. So we each have this highest attribute within us. And for me and for the students whom we work with at the Bhakta school, the breakthrough comes with respect to human dignity, with respect to extending respect and love without distinctions to anyone, in seeing that we are one because we all have this same indweller, this same power, this same God consciousness within us. And if we can respect that about each other and recognize that in each other, then we understand that no one's higher or lower, that we're all equal in this one divine nature. The difference is, today, a lot of people are not interested in being pure. They're not interested in even a concept of divinity. They want to be individuals. They want to be separate. They want to embrace the notion of personality that makes me set apart from everyone else. And these are actually values that are taught in our schools, in our culture, that you're separate, that you're unique, that you're different and set apart from everyone else by personality. But let's really look a little closer at that. Are we that different? Is it not true that with respect to the restless mind is the same for everyone?
Love it.
Isn't it true that to one degree or another, the ego is the ego? Some people have more ego, some people have less, but the ego has a specific structure to it that's the same for all of us. Human beings, every human being has 2 ears, 2 eyes, 1 mouth. Most of us have 2 hands and 1 head.
Yeah.
So when we think about it, even if we examine personality, even if we examine the varying degrees of expression that come with quote unquote personality, they're not dissimilar.
Yeah.
They're incredibly similar. So I don't think that we can even say that we're separate as individuals. That's a notion. and we know, how do we know it's an ocean? Because there are also societies of people. We can go back to Native American, we can go to the East, we can go to India, where societies that are based on the examination and experience of the highest power, where the cultures, for example, Eastern India, the entire culture is based in respect for the self. Yep. As God. People are raised in an entirely different way, and they're raised on meditation and chanting, japa, etc. And so that experience culturally brings, and I'm not saying that Eastern Indian society is perfect, because again, it's spiritually, there has to be an evolution in each and every one of us to that highest point, and it's entirely possible to attain. But together we are better, as you say, works when we respect each other and the oneness of that highest power that exists equally in all. My Gurudev called it equality consciousness.
Love it.
When we have this equality consciousness, we have to discard the notion of diversity and duality to embrace the fact that indeed, and there is a science behind this, that we are one because of this divine power, this energy substratum that exists in each and every one of us, from which there is great joy in the expression of what we call worldliness, where we can actually embrace our humanity. We can learn to express our humanity without becoming contracted by it.
Totally.
We can embrace our humanity and love all worldly activity if we're able to see the divinity in it and not become attached to our own notions, like you say, you know, what we want to see instead of what's really there.
Yeah. So I love what you're saying, and I want to make it really real for people, because in this one idea, and even in popular music, Alanis Morissette said it, what if God were one of us, right? What if God were all of us?
Yes,
everything about life is a perceptual shift. The way we see the world is just the way we see the world. It doesn't mean that's the true way to see the world. So for those of you listening now to Kedarji, what I want you to do for a moment is put aside the way you see the world to the best of your ability and try on what he's saying like a new jacket that you just pulled off the rack. Try it on and put it on for a few moments and walk around with it. How would life change for you if you were to look around at everyone you see, at every conversation you're about to have, at every confrontation you might have been a part of, and say, I am talking right now to God? How would you express yourself? What would you say? What would that conversation look like? How would it change? For those of you on Facebook who can't do anything but post how much you love or hate Donald Trump, how would that conversation change? I don't care which side you're on. How would the conversation change if we all said, this is God talking to God? What would that look like?
So that's a good question. And now I want to offer something, because without experience, the intellectual knowledge that we are one in this highest power is useless. So follow me here, and everyone viewing, follow me here. Right now, gently close your eyes and just take 3 deep breaths, breathing in as deeply as you can. Exhaling as far as you can go. Again, breathing in as deeply as you can. Exhaling as far as you can go. You can do that one more time at your own pace. And now you can just breathe normally as you follow along with my voice, with your eyes closed. Right now, observe any thoughts that are moving through your mind passively, without any response, without any reaction whatsoever. Here's what I mean by that. You've got your eyes closed, you're attempting to watch your thoughts passively, and now an image of pizza pops into your mind. And now you think, oh, why am I thinking of pizza when I should be meditating? That's a reaction. Avoid that. Just like you're lying in a field looking up at the blue sky and clouds are coming back and forth in the sky, and you just watch them passively. Do this with your thoughts now. Let them come and go passively. No reaction, no response. If you start to react or respond, bring your mind gently back to the sound that your breath makes. And just practice this until you hear my voice again. Passive observation. Thoughts coming and going. Don't attach yourself to any of them. Remain rooted in the sound that your breath makes and just observe what takes place next. Just do this until you hear my voice again. Very good. So now you can take a deep breath, breathing in as deeply as you can. Exhaling as far as you can go. And now you can gently open your eyes. And so now I'm going to ask Danny a question, and those of you who are listening or viewing, you can just make a mental note of your own answer to this question or question. So, number one, were you successful in observing your thoughts coming and going passively?
I must have been, because all I was doing was watching my breath. I didn't have much thought.
Good. And then as you did that, did your mind get quieter?
Way quieter.
Right.
I mean, there wasn't, I would, in the beautiful watching of the breath, I felt a sensation of cool coming in, a sensation of warm going out, but it wasn't a thought. It was just a feeling.
Sensation, yeah. So those of you listening and viewing, you can make your own mental note of your experience. This is a very simple technique. We call it witness consciousness centering. For those of you who had a quieter mind, in other words, if you feel better with a quieter mind now than when we started, just so you know, that was 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's a very small period of time. This is a very dynamic and powerful method that we teach. We have a number of these. Because you said Facebook posting whether you hate or love Donald Trump. But in this moment, were you thinking of Donald Trump?
Not even close.
So there is this place, and it is essential. It is essential to go to the paradise of joy that exists in us naturally, and it's there for all of us. But you have to go beyond the mind and beyond the senses to experience it. And doing that every day with the right methods, and this is why we have tons of programs around this at the Bhakta school, because you said perspectives, and you were talking about that and how does one change perspective. You need power for that. And if you can tap into, which you certainly can, the spiritual power and learn how to harness it in the best way, then any of us can realize our fullest potential possible, having the energy substratum as a basis for how our lives manifest, and because we need power. So going beyond the mind and beyond the senses on a regular basis to the witness to our mind, we have a witness to our mind, gives us this power from which we can operate slowly, gradually, to attain in the midst of daily mundane activities the experience of peace, the experience of joy. Once we begin to have those experiences on a regular basis, our perspective has to change, because the nature of the mind automatically changes. That this power causes a transformation in the energy of the mind. There's an exact science behind this that even quantum physics supports. And so as we make the restless mind quiet, it becomes stronger. We have more mental clarity. We have more mental energy, but something else happens. When you are able to operate out of a growing state of inner peace, joy, and inner strength, you have far better discrimination.
Yeah.
You have far better discernment. There is no rush to judgment. There is no push to judge or to disparage. You're able to, in an unattached way, be the observer of the play of this world. So the Shakti is the play of this world, and that changes. I'm speaking about my own experience now. Is so blessed by my Sri Gurudev. That changes everything, including how the cells function. We'll get into that a little later. But it impacts all areas of well-being when, for example, you've been able to address and reduce or eliminate fear, doubt, worry, anxiety, sarcasm, cynicism, depression, anger.
So let me jump in.
These are all qualities connected to the restless mind.
Totally.
When we go beyond the mind and beyond the senses, we can conquer these. Now you're transformed. Well, you're from experience, not just.
I understand. I want to jump in because I don't want to lose listeners along the way.
Sure.
Because
well, I don't think we've lost them. I think everybody listening to this has had an experience, and they're with us. Go ahead.
I hope so. I want to make sure for those people. I'm someone who's meditated every day of my life for 45 years now straight. So I'm right on par with you. I mean, I'm not right on par with you, but I understand where you're coming from. Okay. My question is for the people that listened and got drowsy, for the people that listened and fell asleep, for the people that listen and think, oh, I don't know, for the people that are going through what we've just gone through, which is coronavirus, and have been scared to death of where their income is going to come from, and have they lost their job, and what are they going to do? I understand that this practice, because I've seen it take me from that fear to that peace. But to someone who hasn't experienced the experience that you and I have experienced of being scared to death, being scared out of their mind of how they're going to pay for their mortgage, how they're going to take care of their family, what are they going to do? How do you get that restless mind in that moment to say, It really is just this easy.
So,
Just calm your mind, calm your thoughts, calm your breath, and just watch what happens.
so I'm going to share with you from my own experience the
Please.
direct answer to your question. So, first of all, it's a practice. And practices are cumulative. If you go into the gym and you want to develop strength of a muscle, you've got to begin to lift weights, not just for a day or two, for weeks or months, and continue that practice. And then the muscle grows and you get stronger and stronger. So in spiritual practice, it's the same. It's ongoing practice every day that begins to, quote unquote, make perfect. And you find yourself slowly becoming more and more established in the state beyond the mind and beyond the senses. But it's cumulative. That's not going to happen all at once. Now, having said that, when in the early stages of my relationship with my spiritual mentor, I was married. We were in way over our head. We had purchased a very large co-op in Midtown Manhattan in the theater district, and we're living beyond our means in every single way. And I was supporting the household. My wife was a dancer, videographer. She wasn't making any money at the time. And she really didn't want to work. Our initial agreement was I'm going to take care of her and whatever family arises. So to make a long story short, we fell into deep debt. So you're talking about mortgages. So we were foreclosed on, lost the co-op. My car was repossessed. My wife, seeing the handwriting on the wall, decided and came to me and said, you're no longer favorable as a husband, and I want a divorce. Because we were going through financial difficulty, she said, I don't want to be with you anymore. I found someone else. Yeah. And she was having an affair while we were going through these trials and tribulations financially. And so then she split, right? So we lost everything. I was homeless for 6 months on the street, Midtown Manhattan, New York City, completely homeless. Now, I'm making this point for one reason. My relationship with my spiritual guru had already begun. And so I'm talking to you and I'm telling your listeners from direct personal experience, because I did a blog on coronavirus last week. I talked about the importance to go beyond the mind, beyond the senses, and not to acquiesce to fear. And I got hate mail. I got hate emails from people who said, you should be ashamed of yourself. Fear is not going to help you if you're sick with coronavirus. They don't know what they're talking about. I'm going to come back to it because they're not aware. I'm a holistic practitioner, and I speak with immunologists and doctors every day who are in my network. So I'm going to come back to that, but let me finish this point. When I was homeless on the street, I had no friends. My family members abandoned me. They said, you're a loser. The only friend I had was my mom, who continued to stay in touch by sending people to look for me. And my mom would wrap a dollar bill as a pyramid. She liked to fold her dollar bills in pyramid shape. Yeah. She thought that had some impact on getting more money. God bless her soul. And she would send these people to find me on the street with this pyramid dollar and say, please just find him and give him this dollar. It's going to help him. 6 months. What got me through that 6 months in a period where everyone who I knew said, if that were me, I would have shot myself. I would have committed suicide. What got me through is my spiritual practice. What got me through is the welling up of inspiration that came from that practice. Mantra yoga, keeping the mind quiet to keep fear out, to keep doubt out, to attach myself to the inner experience of strength to meet any challenge that I had begun to develop. I may not have not been perfect at it at that time, but I had to rely on the only thing I had. There's only one thing no one can take away from you, and that's the divinity you have inside you. Perfect. Everything material you can lose.
Pause with me for a minute.
Yeah.
Because I hear already the questions that my people are asking. Okay, and so I want to ask them to you because I love this conversation. Because what I think it will untie for people is some of the misperceptions around what the spiritual life is. Because I hear people saying to me, well, hold it, if you had a teacher and he was your mentor, how in the heck did you go into how did that teacher allow you to go into a place of homelessness? How did you reach that place of despair when someone like wouldn't why would that happen?
So let me answer that question, because this is unfortunately, it's unfair for anyone to say that. I'm responsible for my life. Even though I had a very great spiritual guru, there's nothing he could do to elevate me unless my own will was behind it. Unless I accepted and followed the instruction, for example, unless I obeyed what he taught me to the letter, at least to test it. So we are responsible for our own lives. We own the unfolding of our lives. And so no one can be blamed for our karmas. I can't blame my spiritual guru for that.
Ourselves included?
Sorry?
No one, meaning ourselves included, can be blamed.
Well, we create our own karmas, but blame is not a good word. I'm just saying that my guru is not responsible for my karmas. I created those karmas. And so let's not even talk about past karmas. Let's talk about the principle of karma in daily life. And I'll give you one very relevant example. We are now in the midst of lockdowns in cities all across the US over coronavirus, right? Now, people who act on that advice create certain karmas for themselves, right? By doing so. For example, I've got a family who I know, half the family says we're staying in, the other half said, I'm not listening to this mandate, I'm gonna go and hang out with my friends, stay in crowds. Everything has a consequence. Every action has a consequence.
Yeah.
So here's the point I'm making. Let's talk about coronavirus for a moment. Coronavirus, the virus itself, has never been isolated. Koch's postulate, Koch was a German immunologist and virologist who has set the gold standard for all immunology, including examining novel viruses like the one we have today. In order to know that a virus is making you sick, you have to isolate the pathogen and then what they call purify it. Purifying the pathogen means you separate the pathogen from any other contaminants so that it's just the pathogen that you think is related to the virus. Now you've got to inject that into animals to see whether the animals are developing the same exact symptoms as you are observing in the human population. That's the next step. If they are, then you've got to extract the pathogen from the animal, re-purify it to see if you're left with the same pathogen. Only then can you say, yes, this virus is causing these illnesses. That has not happened.
Wow.
COVID-19, no one has proved it causes death or any symptomology. What has been proved is that the people with coronavirus who have died, most of whom are elderly, had many other underlying illnesses and diseases. What does that mean? Their immune systems were compromised.
Yep.
When our immune systems are compromised, we can die of almost anything.
Yep. Yep.
any
yep.
bacteria or disease. But there are people who, because there are these mandates, who are uninformed. We believe in science here. Even our spiritual practice is based on science. You have to have the tools to prove everything in the laboratory of your own existence before you accept it. And we follow this. This is a principle that our entire path is based on for well-being. So when you have this situation where the government or researchers say, we have a virus, it's a pandemic. Okay, let's look at the numbers. Let's look at, is it a pandemic? Do you know that 13 million people last year around the globe died of the ordinary flu, whatever the flu was for last year? We're nowhere near that. We're at 400,000 plus deaths. 15 million died last year. There was no declaration of a pandemic last year. So there's something really funky going on. And we've got cities shutting down. Not that people shouldn't be cautious, but what I'm saying is, before anyone accepts anything verbatim, perform your own due diligence, get the facts before you respond at all. Just to take a soundbite from the media and to say, well, I could die, so I'm staying home. It's not acceptable. Every citizen has to get the facts. Let's talk about the COVID-19 test. How are you going to test for a pathogen that you've never isolated? So what's happening in Europe, what's happening in Asia, false positives for COVID-19 because they've never isolated the pathogen. Now, does it help to still test? Yes, but the tests are going to show, well, people may have another virus like SARS-CoV-2. CoV-2 SARS was last year's influenza strain. It's still in the bloodstream of many people this year. We don't know if it's SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19 that's killing people.
I want to reel you in, because
Yeah.
we could go down this path for a long time.
Absolutely. But all I'm saying is get the facts. Don't just accept what the
Totally.
media says, what the president says, what the government says. Get the facts, because the facts are different. Just like you say, you see one thing, but it's not really what's going on. It's not really the truth.
Yeah. So it's so easy to get caught in the ball rolling.
Sure.
And even in our conversation here, we get caught in the ball rolling, because really that wasn't what we've come here to talk about, but we got the ball rolling, and it's rolling in that direction. And so what I want to do is try and pull things back in, pull things to the place where,
well, look, may I just say one thing? Because
wrap it around.
We haven't gotten too far of fear. Just one quick thing. Fear destroys intelligence. And that's my point of talking about the coronavirus.
Good.
So now we're back to where we were. Fear destroys intelligence. So if we acquiesce to fear, no intelligent behavior evolves out of fear, anxiety, worry, doubt, depression, cynicism, sarcasm. How do we address those?
Yeah.
Because when we address those, we have a very clear outlook on what steps need to be taken next.
Yeah.
That's spiritual power.
Yeah. So to people who feel afraid, that nobody wants to feel afraid, or maybe they do, but let's assume in the goodness of humanity.
Sure.
That no one wakes up in the morning and says, I want to feel afraid today.
And no one does. I'm sorry.
Right. And so for those people who find themselves feeling afraid, clearly the practice of the breath that you took us through can help them.
Absolutely. And if those are people who do not have already a sustained spiritual practice, they need to reach out to others. There's a certain degree of community, particularly, for evolved saints, they can be alone and it doesn't matter. But for people who have not attained that state, and this is why we have group programs, as a matter of fact, even if people reach out to people, 1 or 2 or 3 people, family members who perhaps have greater inner strength than they do, friends who have a stronger outlook that things are going to be fine, because company is everything. So yes, the spiritual practice is important, but keeping the most useful company for staying strong is also important.
Perfect. So in that light, you are sponsoring, you are putting on, it was a internet global summit.
Virtual summit, yes.
Okay. And so I would like you to spend a little bit of your time telling people what will go on in that summit, because if they are intoxicated, clearly this man is a brilliant man. Clearly he has something he wants to share with you. Clearly, I wish his mom and he could go into every household and bring back basic human core values of treating people with dignity and respect. But underneath those core values, there's a spiritual practice. And I want to be very aware, because a lot of people in the world are very religious people. But sometimes I have to be very sensitive of how I'm saying this. Sometimes a spiritual practice and a religious practice are different practices.
They're absolutely different.
Yeah.
They're absolutely different.
And so for people who are religious or aren't religious because they don't want to be religious, talk about the spiritual practice and talk about what might happen in the Whole Life Transformation Summit.org. Because I want to bring people to something.
Sure. So we are offering, it will go live. It will be June 15 through 19. On this interview page, you'll see Danny has posted a link, Whole Life Transformation Summit And what we've done is we've assembled what we feel are some of the best healing practitioners, scientists, researchers, doctors, yogis, and also some really world-renowned performing artists, all together in one summit to talk about leading a holistic lifestyle, a lifestyle of healing and holistic well-being. And we've even got experts, doctors who are going to give us some expert counsel they've adopted as part of their own practices, healing modalities, whole food, plant-based meal plans, right? Plant-based nutrition. They're very big on nutrition. So we brought all these people together. It's going to be 15 to 20 speakers to talk about methods and ways in which people can attain well-being in all the areas of their lives. And so I'm hosting the summit myself. I'll also be speaking in some interviews on the summit, but we have some really great people, well-known, very strong careers, and it's going to be a place where people can come and hear interviews and get methods for whole life transformation based on holistic lifestyle. And so we encourage everyone to attend. It's free. From June 15 through June 19, people will be able to see all of the pre-recorded interviews for free. And there's a kit, there are bonuses, there are lots of things that people will be able to take advantage of so that they can claim additional tools to work with after the summit is over. And so that's what the Whole Life Transformation Summit is. And we're very excited about it because it's going to be a number of experts together under one roof.
So for those of you who have gone through isolation of coronavirus, for those of you who have had some fear around how to live life, for those of you who have become a little empty because everything that you used to be doing was no longer what you're doing now, what a perfect opportunity on June 15th to be able to listen in free of charge right from the comfort of your home to some of the greatest speakers, experts, doctors, healers, all sorts of things, coming to allow you to fill yourself up now with things that can make you well, that will literally transform you and will help you to get the spiritual power that you need. The improved mentals. The improved mental.
Yeah, good. So now don't forget improved mental state. I know that's where you're going. Improved mental state, emotional resilience, and vibrant health. We need all of these. These are gifts.
These are gifts.
Combine them. We have to experience all of them. But yes, that's the list.
That's the list.
4 pillars of total well-being.
And that's what you have free of charge by going to the link wholelifetransformationsummit.org, which will be on the show notes.
Yes.
Kedarji, before I let you go, I ask this to everyone as the closing question. We could talk for hours, and I hope we will continue.
I know. I'm just getting started.
I know you are. That's why I was trying to, because we're cutting into
like,
talk.
Oh my God, he's talking about coronavirus now. Where are we going?
and the only thought that I had during the quiet and peace of our meditation was, oh my God, this is radio time. This is air time. 22 minutes of silence. What are people thinking? Okay, but I felt I let it go. When you look into the world that you see, and the world has changed in the last 4 weeks, the world has changed a lot. But when you look at the world you see, is this the world you always dreamed of handing over to your kids and to future generations?
I would have to say yes, because in my own experience, this place is nothing but a paradise of joy. And for my kids or family, I don't have any children of my own, but I have a family, spiritual community. You know, the world is as we see it. And from the spiritual perspective, the only true spiritual path is one that delivers you into a state where you experience this place as a paradise of joy. This world is a manifestation and expression of God. And there's no question about that in my mind. And I say this from my own personal experience, not as an intellectual understanding. I wake up every morning by the blessing and grace of my spiritual master and mentor and the grace of my own practice over many, many, many years. I wake up every morning with my heart singing and dancing in indescribable joy.
Hmm.
That's the point of all spiritual practice. This is the goal of all religion. And if you wake up with your heart singing and dancing in indescribable joy, how can you see this place as anything other than a paradise?
Yeah.
As anything other than a paradise. So I would bring anyone into this world, but with the vision to do what is necessary to have that vision.
Yeah.
Huh?
I love
Of
that.
joy,
I love that.
of love without distinctions. And once we become established in that, then we have the right glasses on. Huh?
Beautiful. Beautiful. Kedarji, tell people again how they can find you. Tell people how they can find the summit that you're doing. And again, everything is going to be listed in the show notes, but just tell them how they can find you if they
Yes. So first of all, to get more information about, we have two paths of study, and it's called the Bhakta School of Transformation, BHAKTA School of Transformation. That website is bhaktaschool.org. And that's the hub for all of the programming that I and teaching staff lead. And we have two specific, we call them paths of study. One is for people who really just want to focus on well-being that's very, very connected to vibrant health, and that's fine, and we offer that. And the second path of study is a path of study for people who really want permanent spiritual transformation as a high priority in their lives, and they want to dig deeper into methods, into tools that can get them there. And so, you know, I have been called a spiritual leader, I've been called a Sadguru, but I lead without insisting that anyone follows me.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, we provide an environment for people to come to this in their own way. And that's why we have these two paths of study. So that's bhaktaschool.org. And so people can go there and see all the information about what we do. Please download the new book, Live Strong, Be Happy. And then the next big event is our live virtual summit, wholelifetransformation.org. Sorry, wholelifetransformationsummit.org. And the summit will go live June 15 through 19, but people can begin to go to the website in early May to look around, to see the speakers that are going to be speaking, to look at the bonuses that they can begin to get before the summit starts. We're going to have sneak previews. And by the way, I'm very, very happy to announce on this program that I will be interviewing Danny Levin as well. So we're very, very excited about that. So that's where people can go to get started.
So thank you so much for taking your time, giving the biggest gift that's available of our time to not only to me, but to the people that listen. If I can take 1 minute just to summarize sort of what I heard here.
Sure.
For our listeners. Everything about what I try and do on this podcast is to bring you perspectives that allow you to alter the way you see the world, if you choose to alter the way you see the world. Mm-hmm. When we realize the world we're looking at is the world we're looking at, but not the world that is, to me, the greatest gift we can give another human being is to show them another perspective, to allow them to see the world through a different set of eyes. And I think what happened today is Kedarji opened up a world for you if you're willing to go into it. You don't have to, but if you're willing to go into it, the promise of that world that he opened up for you is contentment and peace, strong spiritual power, vibrant health and well-being, and a beautiful life where very few of the guests that I've ever had on this podcast have said in as resounding a way what Kedarji just said of, this is the most beautiful world in the whole world because I only can see a beautiful world because of where I'm at. I would love to be able to give you the gift of being able to see the world the way he sees the world. My own teacher, Paramahansa Yogananda, said when someone asked him, how do I get to heaven? He said, heaven is right here, right now. You carry with you a portable paradise or a portable hell. You choose which one you live in. And I believe that what Kedarji is saying to you is something very, very similar. And so it's hard to believe that we're all connected when we look at the forms and we see how different we look and how on the outside we're so separate and so different. But when we go down even just a milliliter beneath the superficial outside shell of who we are, I love how Kedarji said, all of us have a restless mind. We're very similar in that. And all of us want the same thing. We want to be loved and accepted. We want to be listened to and heard. We want to be validated and acknowledged. No one throughout the course of my life has ever said to me, Danny, I want you to agree with me. Because when they feel listened to and heard and validated and acknowledged and loved and accepted, they understand that I have the right to believe what I believe, and as do they. But together we can not allow our differences to tear us apart, but to actually innovate us and make us bigger and better. Whatever you're feeling, become aware of what you're feeling. Fear is not a bad thing in my mind if it propels you to finding peace. And the only reason fear exists is to teach us how to love. The only reason impurity exists is to show us what purity is. So, but take that escalator from one to the other. And there are people around this planet like Kedarji that are doing that are helping you to take that escalator. And I hope you will not walk, but run. Not run, but fly. And sign up immediately at wholelifetransformationsummit.org. And I hope you will go to bhaktaschool.org and sign up for the free ebook that he wants to give you. It's an honor to have you. For those of you who come all the time, just another beautiful soul in a beautiful mosaic that we call this life. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your time. And I look forward to seeing all of you at the next podcast. If you like this, be sure to like it and review it on Apple Podcasts so that people more, and share it with your friends. Tell more people about it so that people can experience this beautiful soul like you have.
Thank you for having me. And love is everything. It all comes back to love in the end. I love you.
I love you too. Thank you. God bless you, brother.